listening to the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing and Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing and Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Britt Colo, and I'm here today with Elle Drouin, product stylist and photographer. Thank you so much for joining me today, Elle.
Hi, Britt. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so I am so excited to have Elle on the podcast because I originally found out about her, kind of learned about her different businesses, very different businesses, through Steph Crowder's podcast, Courage and Clarity. And I think Elle was already on my calendar to have on the podcast, but then I got to listen in. I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot wait to talk to this girl. This is just an incredible story, incredible businesses and how they've just evolved. So I can't wait to get some even more insight into her business, her industry, her marketing strategies, and what makes it all tick. So Elle, are you ready to jump in?
So excited.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so first of all, Elle, can you explain to us, how do you earn your living?
So I am a product stylist, photographer, content creator. I kind of have a few different businesses running side by side. So I work with beauty and lifestyle brands to create custom branded imagery for their businesses. I run the Styled Stock Society, which is a stylish stock photo subscription for female entrepreneurs. And I'm also the voice and creative director behind Mochi and the City. Mochi is my 3-year-old Maltipoo dog. She has over 100,000 followers on Instagram. She is a dog model and influencer. She's actually been featured on Entrepreneur as one of the most entrepreneurial dogs in America. And we've partnered with brands like American Express, Disney, Google, Ritz-Carlton, and more. So I have a lot of different things going on, but they all sort of revolve around photography and content creation.
Yes, that's so incredible. It's what a world we live in to allow these things to be a thing and to be viable income producers for you, and that's just incredible. So take us back, because I have a million questions, but take us back and tell us the story. First, how the Styled Stock Society came to be, and if you can, weave in the Mochi story. I know as soon as people heard that Mochi had 100,000 followers on Instagram, they're like, wait, what? And it's a dog. So however you can weave that in, just tell us the story. How did you come to do this stuff with your life?
So I actually studied business in college. I started my career in corporate finance. I pivoted to work in marketing for a few years. And when I eventually launched my own business, Wonderful Media, I actually started initially thinking that I was going to do digital marketing consulting full time. I quickly realized that consulting full-time meant I spent all day talking to people, and I'm actually super introverted. And the idea of talking to people all day long was really exhausting for me, and I knew it just wasn't a sustainable way to grow a business. So I launched some online courses. I created digital products. I kind of tried a bunch of different things, trying to figure out what I really wanted my business model to look like. And I thought that the idea of a subscription service or membership site of some sort was attractive because I wanted to create an income stream that would sort of smooth the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and create more of a consistent profit. So summer of 2016, I was trying to decide what type of membership or subscription to create. And I essentially went through my email opt-ins at the time and all of the people who had opted into my email list and figured out, why were they there? What were they coming to me for? And I was really surprised to see that over 1,000 people had downloaded these free stock photos that I had offered on my website. And I thought, okay, why is this the case? And I realized that a lot of people in my audience were similar to me. So they were female entrepreneurs who are trying to run online businesses. They were active on social media. They had blogs. And for all of this stuff, they needed photos. And most of them weren't photographers. They didn't have the budget to hire someone full-time to be their photographer. So the idea of having access to, in this case, it was free stock photos, was really appealing to them. So I thought, okay, what if I were to create something where I would give them access to photos on a regular basis? If I would create a certain number every month and they would pay me a fee, is this something they would be interested in? So I put that out there. I actually sent an email to the 1,000 people who had downloaded the free stock photos with an offer for the subscription service that I thought I wanted to create. And I didn't have a website for it. I didn't have a sales page. I honestly didn't even have the photos taken at the time. It was just an idea. But 72 people signed up in the first 48 hours. They were like,
Wow.
Sure, you can take photos from me. So I thought, okay, this is like a real thing that could actually be a viable income stream. But maybe my initial offer was really low, and that's why a lot of people took advantage of it. So I doubled the price and I pitched the idea to the rest of my email list, which at the time I think was like 3,000 people. It wasn't a huge audience, but there were people there.
Mm-hmm.
And another 78 people signed up in the next couple of weeks. So I had about 150 people sign up in my initial launch period. And I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I wasn't a photographer at the time. I knew how to use the camera. I definitely wasn't an expert, I would say. My thought was I had taken photos when I worked in marketing before I had even launched my own business. I worked for an e-commerce startup. We didn't have a full-time photographer on staff, so I ended up taking a lot of the photos for our social content and blog content. I had previously run my own blog that I had taken photos for, but it was just like a hobby. I was taking photos for my own brand, and I thought, I can take pictures for other people too. I didn't really plan for it to turn into a whole business. It was sort of just going to be a side income stream. But around the same time, I realized that I had started Mochi's Instagram account already. And when I first started her account, I was just taking like quick iPhone photos of her doing really nothing that exciting. It was mostly like napping or sitting on the couch. But we had gotten to around 10, 15,000 followers, and brands started reaching out, and I thought, this could also be a thing. So I decided to take my marketing background and take the things I had learned in terms of running an online business and really apply that to growing Mochi's brand as well. And because her brand is so visual, it's really, on Instagram, I realized that my photography skills would be valuable across both businesses. And so I really focused on kind of getting better at doing that, learning more about photography, about editing. And I realized I really enjoyed it. So by the end of 2016, I realized that I didn't really want to run online courses anymore. I didn't really want to do any consulting, that I was going to focus solely on the photography side of my business, which was never the plan. But it was really the thing that I enjoyed the most. And it had really taken off in terms of my stock photo membership. I started with over 100 members, I guess, in the beginning, and now I have well over 1,000. So that part of my business really was something that I enjoyed spending time on, and I enjoyed creating the content for my members. And I also realized that, I really enjoyed creating a brand with my dog. So all these things kind of came together at the same time. Mochi's account actually went from like 15,000 to 30,000 in 2 months. And from there, we actually hired a manager. So she's actually represented by an agency. and they are able to help us a lot with like the business side of things. So that's kind of for the last year or so where my business has been, or business is, I guess I should say.
That's
Kind of
incredible.
just growing in both ways.
That's incredible. So, and you know what I've just picked up on that really intrigues me is that, I mean, you were doing the work. You had a blog and you had started creating your email lists and trying stuff. And in, and as you decided that, you know what, I think that that there's an opportunity to create a membership, some recurring revenue, that was really kind of what was driving you. It sounds like you didn't try to come up with something brand new or anything. You just looked at your assets. You looked at like, okay, well, what have I already done that seemed to resonate? I I want to give you some credit for that, because I think sometimes, especially as creative entrepreneurs, we're constantly trying to reinvent the wheel, come up with new and creative ways to do things, and we forget that we've already done incredible things that could use a solid like tweak or a different way to be packaged, and boom, we've got like, essentially for you, it was like this whole new business, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's pretty cool.
I mean, my favorite thing is really to take a look at the stuff that you're already doing for free and figure out how to get people to pay you for it. That's like, I feel like the easiest way to make money if you already have some sort of audience or content. It's just, like, what do I do to, in some cases, it's taking a lot of stuff that you're already giving away for free and just packaging them together and, turn a bunch of blog posts into an ebook and charge $10 for it. Like, it's just such an easy way to repurpose your content. But for me, yeah, it was really just taking a look at, what I was already doing. And at the time I was doing it for free and sort of said, okay, would you pay for this? And the answer was yes.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I'm also hearing, even for the person who's listening that doesn't have the business, doesn't have the content yet. I know a lot of us have the content. We just haven't thought about how it can actually be repurposed and repackaged and sold. But for the person who doesn't even have the business yet, that's still a really valuable question. What do you do for free? What do people come to you for? And it might be so second nature to you, you don't even realize that like they would actually pay you for it if it was your thing, if it was your business. So yeah, that's a huge takeaway. I love that we went there. So I want to focus in on Styled Stock Society for a second. So you pitched it to your email list, didn't even have you didn't even have the photos, which I love that. Just, hey, I'm just going to go try this without trying to make everything perfect first. You pitched it to your email list. A great number of people bought, and then you pitched it again at a higher rate. A whole other slew of people bought. Take us through the next few iterations of this thing, and what does it look like now?
Yeah, so when it first started, it was more like a subscription box service, if you will, where you get like a set number of photos. It was 30 photos a month for a fee. And that's kind of like, you didn't get to pick. There wasn't a whole library. It was just like a simple subscription. Mm-hmm. And over the past almost 2 years at this point, it's actually grown into more of like a Netflix model, if you will. So it's a whole library of images that we're constantly adding to. We're also constantly taking out photos from, earlier. Photos tend to not live in the library forever. I want to keep things fresh. I want to constantly be updating them. I don't want everyone who becomes a member today to have access to photos from like 2 years ago, just to keep things kind of exclusive in a sense for the members. And as the member library has grown, my price has also gone up. So I think that for me, it was really important to scale things over time and play around with pricing, because it's tricky to price a membership or subscription service. It's not like, when you are providing a service or even selling a product and you have some idea of the time it took you to, actually do the thing, if it's not hourly, to create it, or the supplies it took to to make something, or things like that. It's like I'm creating something once, but I'm selling it to a lot of people in a membership or in a subscription. And so pricing has been something that's been a little bit tricky, and I've sort of just had to play around with gradually increasing as the value increases, and then making judgment calls in terms of what's best for my, business cash flow as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's cool. I always like to understand the different iterations, because sometimes we can, believe that right now is how it looked in the beginning, and that's never the case. But for some reason, our minds just assume that, and then like, how can we build that? Well, you don't build that first. So that's super cool.
Yeah, no, I didn't. When I launched, I didn't have a website. I didn't even have a sales page. I had like a link in an email to check out via PayPal or something like that. Like it was something very, 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 very simple. And then I originally, I've switched the way that I run my membership twice in the past 2 years. And I wish I could say just once, but I think the first time I started using a platform that wasn't really built to scale, and I didn't anticipate the growth that was going to happen. Because as I said, it wasn't really supposed to be my business. It was just going to be this side income stream project. And then I kind of quickly realized within the first 6 months that the original platform was just not going to work long term. And I ended up having to manually migrate like 500 members, which was not fun. So the original site and system that we used to run the membership definitely is nowhere near what it looks like now. I mean, and ended up like building a whole membership site, and it's totally different and works great now, but did not start out that way.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. So I wonder, because now as we look back, it's like, yeah, I put out the email and 72 people bought this thing. And then a little bit later, 78 people bought this thing. And it can that can be kind of a trigger, I think, for some people who have tried to offer things and it's been crickets. It's like, dang, like how does that happen for some people? So I wonder how, if you could zero in on what made that offer work, whether it was the offer itself or the work that you did prior to that offer, if you could zero in on that, what was it?
I think when I first started building my audience, my target audience was really other female business owners or wannabe business owners who were starting out to build their businesses online. And actually the first things that I was doing, I was consulting and creating courses and digital products. And that was all targeting the same people that are in the Styled Stock Society. So my list was already very targeted. My audience was already targeted. And a lot of the people who are in the Styled Stock Society had actually already bought things from me. So they had either signed up for one of my courses, or we had done consulting sessions, or they had just, seen me live on webinars and things like that. So it wasn't like those 1,000 people that I pitched. It wasn't a cold audience. There were people who already knew who I was, and I think trusted me. Yeah. And I honestly went into this saying, like just very truthfully, like I'm not really a photographer, but this is something that I think could be helpful to you as you try to grow your business. If you think that's the case, then here's the offer. I really went into it with an open mind, thinking like this is something that I would be interested in doing and I think could be helpful for my specific audience. And I think that's the thing that has really made the biggest difference when it comes to like growing the Styled Stock Society and really just my photography business as a whole. I think there are a lot of photographers or people with similar businesses or memberships even, and they were photographers who, maybe they were portrait photographers or wedding photographers who then decided to create a membership or subscription. And that's great. I wasn't a photographer before. I was actually a marketing pro. Like that's what I did. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, no matter what I'm selling, I want to help people build their businesses online. And so whether that's through consulting or courses, or at this point in my life, it's actually creating content, creating the photos for them to help them do that. That the thing that sort of drives in business is like my experience with marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so valuable to be getting photos from a marketer. That's, you wouldn't necessarily think of that, but now as you explain it, it does make sense. So that's pretty cool. Okay. So now you started this Instagram account for Mochi. I mean, a lot of people do that, right? Like they start an Instagram account for their dog, and I want, you kind of like glossed over. She had like 10 to 15,000 followers kind of all of a sudden before you really started to think like, oh, like this could kind of be a thing. And eventually she has her own agent now. So why did you start the account? And then take us through the evolution of that whole thing. Because it's gotten, Mochi's a big deal. Like she is not a little small deal anymore. So small dog, not a small deal. So take us through the evolution of that.
Yeah. So Mochi is 3 years old. When the first year or so of her Instagram, I started it pretty much like right after we brought her home. I really didn't want my Instagram account to be like full of pictures of my dog. I try to limit myself to like one Mochi picture a week on my own account. And so at the time, I was just like, I'm going to create this other account. Maybe some of my friends and my family will follow it. I knew there were other dogs on Instagram, but I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to make my dog famous. It was just like, I'm going to put my dog picture somewhere else. And her account quickly surpassed mine. I mean, I think in the beginning, I probably had a few thousand followers when I started hers, and then she quickly surpassed mine. And I honestly wasn't doing that much in the beginning. Like I followed some other dog accounts and would like and comment. I actually found a few other dogs that were in New York, and I thought like, oh, this would be fun. I had actually just moved to New York the year before, so I was still kind of trying to meet people. And I realized that having a dog was a great way to kind of meet other people who had dogs in the city. And a lot of dogs in New York happen to be on Instagram. So I always think it's weird now when I go to a place, like whether we're at the park or at a restaurant and we see other dogs, and I'm like, oh, like, what's your dog's name? Like assuming the dog's on Instagram, not even thinking that people have dogs that are not on Instagram, which is a weird thing. It's like, like, oh, isn't every dog on Instagram? But yeah, so the first 10, 15,000 was just really organic. And I thought that if this happened, if all these 10, 15,000 people wanted to follow my dog, obviously I think she is very, very cute. But what if I were more intentional about what we were sharing? So, if you scroll back, it's really embarrassing actually, but no one's business or thing looks the same in the beginning as it does now. So a few years ago, if you scroll back, you'll see lots of not great photos of Mochi like sitting on the couch and not doing much. And if people liked her enough to follow those photos, I thought, well, what if we put a little more thought into what we're sharing? So her handle's Mochi and the city. And one of the things that I have always felt very strongly about is kind of taking her everywhere with me, doing everything with me. She's really small, and I've kind of sought out dog-friendly places, whether we're in New York or when we're traveling. And so that has kind of been one of her like key themes. So anything that's like dog-friendly, life in the city. She's really into fashion. I thought about who the people were that are following her, and they're mostly millennial females. They're people who are people, first of all. So I think a lot of times it's easy to think that like, okay, so she's a dog and there's a lot of dog accounts that follow her, but behind those dog accounts are actual people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those people are similar to me. They, drink wine and watch The Bachelor and like to go shopping. And so I was just like, okay, what if Mochi is that like cute girl next door who has a personality and she has life, and you can literally peek into her closet on her Instagram and see where she's traveling, and sort of just like created this mini Mochi persona. And that really, I think, made her come alive and made more people relate to her. She wasn't just a dog who napped a lot, which honestly is what she does. But, in the 3 hours a day where she's not napping, she does like to do things. She loves to play dress up. She goes with me everywhere. We travel together. And so I think, just being intentional about who Mochi the brand is and what we're actually sharing when it comes to her content has really allowed us to connect with people in a more intentional way. They they want to follow along with the Mochi story, and she's not just this like random dog that naps a lot.
Yes, the story and the voice and the character that you've created her to be. And I think it might be easy to think about it and think, well, it's a dog, so maybe easy to create a character. But I don't think it's easy. I think it's smart. And I think it can also be applied to any brand. Any brand, because Mochi and the City is a brand. I mean, aside from it being a dog, based on a dog, like as you're creating a brand, you have to create a brand voice and a persona and understand who might be most interested in that, and that's your ideal client, right? So all of the pieces that we so often think about and have to think about when we're building our brands, it comes into Mochi too. And it's such a unique, creative example of all of those things. I can't wait to hear what it might spark in the listeners' ears, and just to think about it in that different of a way to help them creatively think about their own brand. I think that's so cool. Okay, so now Mochi is not just on Instagram, but she is partnering with huge brands. And you mentioned she has an agent and everything. So is she essentially sought out by these big brands to appear in their promotions? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. Sometimes she does like sponsored content on her own channels, mainly Instagram, but she is on Facebook and she has a blog. She has a website. So she does create content for brands on her own channels, but then sometimes it is brands reach out to have her make like event appearances. Like one of the things we did with Google last year was they were trying to promote the new Pixel 2 phone when it came out towards the end of the year. So they had a shopping event at a Google pop-up in New York, and they had a few Instagram famous dogs that you could come and do meet and greets. And then if you bought a phone, you actually got Mochi wrapping paper. So they actually had wrapping paper printed with Mochi's face on it. And if you bought like products in the pop-up that day, you got Mochi wrapping paper along with your products. So things like that, which are really fun and cool. And just, it's really exciting to see that, my dog who is, she's my dog, but she's gotten the opportunity to collaborate with some really cool brands. And I'm just really fortunate to be a part of it as well.
Yeah. Well, you are the mama behind it, right? And the kind, I would want to say the marketing and PR mastermind behind it. So, and I wonder, and that kind of just sparked something, as you were before kind of the face of your brand, as you were running your blog and you were perhaps consulting with clients. And I wonder, do you feel like it fits your personality to have these brands that you are not the face of, but you're kind of behind the scenes making the amazing stuff happen? Do you notice kind of a difference in those two situations where you are the face and where you aren't the face? And take me into that. How does that sit with you?
There's definitely a difference. So I'm actually way more comfortable not being the face of my own brand. I'm way more confident in Mochi and Mochi's brand and pitching Mochi and kind of anything that's not me related. When I first started my blog like a million years ago, I still had a 9 to 5 job and I blogged anonymously for a while, but partially because I couldn't tell my day job. It wasn't like really a conflict of interest or anything. It was just really unrelated. And I thought they would think it was silly. And so I was sort of like used to being anonymous on the internet. And, for the first maybe year and a half, running Mochi's account, I don't think anyone knew who I was. I mean, I had made some friends in New York locally who knew who I was because they, we'd have doggy play dates and things like that. But I didn't post pictures of myself on Mochi's account. I didn't like tell anyone that like I was the person behind it. And it's still sometimes funny to me when we go places. We were actually at a press preview for this like dessert event in New York a couple months ago. And I was taking pictures of Mochi and someone randomly came up to me and was like, "Hey, you're Elle, right?" And I was like, wait, because I was invited to the event as Mochi. Mochi was invited. I wasn't invited. And I was like, wait, you know me from the internet? Because most people just know my dog. But then there's a lot of people, I guess, who know who I am and have no idea that I have this dog, which kind of blows my mind because like, she has like a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Somehow you didn't even know she existed and you knew who I was. But great. So I think that I am definitely more confident when it comes to being behind the scenes. And then over the past like year or so, there's definitely been a lot more exposure, I guess you could say, when it comes to revealing like who I am. And not that I was really hiding intentionally. It was more just like, she's the star of the show and I don't want this to be about me. But we did an interview with Entrepreneur where it was like, a few dogs, it was like 4 or 5 dogs with more social media followers than you share tips. And obviously, since she's a dog, she can't actually share tips. So I had to share the tips on her behalf while she sat in my lap. That was pretty cool. I thought that, I was like being on video at the Entrepreneur offices thinking like, this is not why I thought that I would ever be, invited to the Entrepreneur offices to share tips on behalf of my dog. But, I'm excited to be here. And there have been other times where, we went on a trip with the Ritz-Carlton and we were interviewed for a travel magazine sharing about our dog-friendly trip. And obviously I have to think like, they're asking questions like, well, what was Mochi's favorite part of the trip? And Mochi can't answer questions like that. So the interviews are really with me and that's totally great and fine. And it's actually been fun to really embrace that business and, just kind of come out as the voice behind Mochi, but also know that, that's kind of the fun side of my business. It's something that I hope will always stay fun. Otherwise, I probably won't do it. And that it's, not the only thing that I'm doing as well. I don't think I can like only run my dog's Instagram account.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I'd like to shift to that because you have Styled Stock Society, you have Mochi End of the City, and I believe you also do product styling and photography for clients here and there, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So take us into the, dare I say, balance, or let's say the blend of all of those things. And living in New York City, I'm sure you have no shortage of things to go and do and have fun with. So what does that look like for Elle?
So I'm obviously lucky that I get to make my own schedule. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably be able to do everything that I do. And I kind of have gotten to the point where, so everything I can do for my clients and the Styled Stock Society, each of those things, I can really do in a few days a month. So it's not like I schedule no more than 2 client shoots a month. And everything I do for the Styled Stock Society, we're adding anywhere from like 50 to 100 photos a month. That usually takes a day or two to shoot. So it's not like I always think it's weird to say that I'm a photographer because I really only spend like 4 days a month taking photos. And with the exception of Mochi, because for her, I mean, I do try to batch photos for her when I can or for doing something particularly interesting, but I will take like one-off photos of her occasionally.
Right.
For the most part, though, I have 1 week where I create everything. It's all the styling and shooting and editing and uploading. It happens 1 week a month. And then I have 1 month that I focus on marketing. So I do all the marketing for, it's honestly really the Styled Stock Society at this point. All of my clients are referrals. I had to pause there to think, is that the case? Yeah. So other than having a website, I don't really do much marketing for my client-based business, I guess. And then I have 1 week where I do all the sort of big picture planning, strategizing, team meetings, anything like, it's like my CEO week. So it's like big picture stuff. And then I actually have a free week where I usually am traveling or just taking time off. And one of the things that I really wanted to be intentional about this year is just committing to working 3 weeks a month and having more time for me. And I spent a lot of time when I first started my business working all the time. And I didn't start my own business to work more hours. And like a lot of people, I think that's what it ended up being in the beginning. But now that I'm able to really scale and outsource and automate a lot of different parts of my business, I really just try to focus on getting as much done possible in the 3 weeks that I am working, and then have that white space or time off for me to just recharge and creatively be inspired and not have to think about like, what am I actually doing today?
Yeah, that is so attractive. Like, I mean, batching days is one thing, batching weeks is another, and then being able to batch your weeks to the point where you have a week off every month. I know I can just feel listeners being like, oh my goodness, tell me your secrets. And I think you just so beautifully said it. It's really identifying the few key parts that you must do, you as the business owner, as the person doing the stuff, outsourcing the rest that doesn't need to be done by you, and getting really intentional on how you spend your time. Because I'm sure if you hadn't have made that decision at the beginning of the year to really take a week off a month, you could be filling all of your days. I'm sure of it, right? Because we could all find work to do. It takes the intentionality.
Yeah. And for me, it really had to be an intentional decision. I'm like the type of person who could work and would work all the time if I didn't force myself to take time off. And so I really had to build it into like my schedule and just say that like, no, I'm not going to do it, because I think like once I just like cross the line, it's so hard for me to stop working sometimes. And I don't want to spend my whole life working.
Yeah. Ditto on both things. It's hard to cross. It's hard to draw the line, and I don't want to do it forever. Yes. So a couple more questions. I wonder what inspires you in your work, because your work is very different, right? It's super cool and attractive and very different from the traditional, I don't know if there is traditional, the traditional thing that you do. And so what inspires all of this?
That is a great question. So I think I find a lot of inspiration from everything. I think part of it is, living in New York is really inspirational. And even honestly, like 6 months ago, we moved from Manhattan to Brooklyn, and it's such a different vibe. And I'm still really trying to figure out how I feel about it, because there's something about living in Manhattan where there's like a constant hustle and bustle and people just like getting things done. And I don't know like anyone who really, honestly, except maybe my husband, who has like just like a normal 9 to 5 job. Everyone, there's lots of people who have like a 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. job, or they have a day job and a side hustle, or, they do 10 different things. There's just so much, I guess, hustle is if I had to like put the word in New York. And I find it really invigorating. I really like the pace, and there's people doing all sorts of things. Like, I obviously didn't even know that having a dog who made thousands of dollars was a thing a couple years ago. And it's not just, my dog. There's obviously, she's with an agency. It's the dog agency, and they represent like a ton of animals, not just dogs actually, who have, up to millions of followers. And it's just like crazy that that's like a whole business. And that's just, one example of something that's like crazy cool that people are doing in New York. So I'm inspired by the people I meet. I'm inspired by like the vibe of the city. I'm generally inspired by travel. So my goal was like 10 new places this year. This month was the first month that we didn't travel during my off week. And it was nice. It was sort of a breath of fresh air, because it was like, we had done 8 months where we had gone somewhere every single month, and it was great. But also just the idea of like having like a kind of staycation week in the city was nice, and my in-laws happened to be visiting, and that's why we didn't go anywhere. So it was fun to play tourist in my own city. But in the times when I have been able to travel, it's been cool. Like, so even though I was it was either Puerto Rico or Aruba for a brand partnership, I also thought like, oh, it'd be cool to like take some stock photos of like beachy type things while I'm here. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if I hadn't, been at the beach. But it wasn't like I was planning my vacation around taking photos for work. I just happened to be there and think, oh, this is really beautiful. Like, I should share this with people.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It feels inspiring just hearing you talk about it. That's awesome. All right. So one last question we have to end with. I would love for you to look back and tell us, what advice would you give to yourself when you were first starting your business? That girl on her couch, hunched over her MacBook, just trying to figure all of this out. What would you say to her?
So looking back, I think that the thing that is easy for me to say now, but was so hard for me to wrap my head around at the time, was the idea of getting really, really, really specific with something. And especially because my marketing background was very broad. I had done social media and email marketing and blogging and paid advertising. And so when I first started, going from when I went from my day job to starting my business, I was like, oh, like I can talk about anything marketing related. And obviously that it has its place, and I wanted to help lots of people. But I think if I had gotten really, really specific, and honestly, when I first had my business and I was creating courses, the course that was most successful was a course called Celebra Pet Bootcamp. And it was essentially a course that was like Instagram for people who want to make their dogs famous, which is very specific. It's not like Instagram for everyone, or Instagram for business owners, or Instagram for women. It's Instagram for, and honestly, women. It was Instagram. There was probably actually some men in the course, but Instagram for people who want to make their dogs famous.
Yeah.
Which is a very specific course. And it was the most successful. It was the first day that like I made like thousands of dollars in like an hour when I did a webinar. And I was like, wow, this is really crazy. Like this is what people are talking about when they say like get specific. And so I think that if I had done that from the beginning, it would have been easier. And I think that's like one of the things that like sometimes it takes a while to figure out like what you're going to niche down on or how specific you're going to get. And I don't like regret anything that I did, but if I had like known really,
yeah,
in the beginning, not tried. Like my first course was like a kind of a general sales and marketing course to like anyone who wanted to grow their business online. And, you know, I made a few $1,000s and it was fine, but like it was not even on the same level as Celebrity Pet Boot Camp. So get really specific, I guess is what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I like that.
Like it's so hard, I think, sometimes, like when you are just starting something and you think that like, I don't want to alienate people, but like the more you alienate people, the more you attract the people who are really your people.
Amen. So. Yes. Yes. That's the best advice. We have to end there. Please internalize this, listeners. That's so good. The more you alienate, the better you attract. I love it. All right. So before we go, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online?
Yes. So you can find me at elledrouin.com. That's ELLEDROUIN.com. And everywhere on social media at Elle Drouin. Styled Stock Society is styledstocksociety.com, and Mochi is Mochi and the City on Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, you heard her, girls. Go check her out, send her some love, and then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Elle over the next few days.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too, and all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.